recording and then introduce you guys to our speakers. You might have seen them last time. I'll pass it on over to Pam and Trent first, and then we'll kick it off.
Hello, everybody. How are you this evening? Everybody doing well, I hope. We are so happy to be back with you again tonight. We were here on the last one, and we're so excited that so many of you were wanting to learn more. So we are thrilled to be here. So I am Pam Taylor with Watch Me Rise, and this is my son, Trent, who will introduce himself in a minute. But we are a mother and son team, and an adoptive parent and an adoptee, and we are both trauma professionals and TBRI practitioners. So we're going to be kind of talking you through a few things tonight. We also have the honor of having Mindy Kaiser with us. And Mindy, you want to introduce yourself for just a minute?
Hi, everybody. My name is Mindy Kaiser. I'm a TBRI practitioner, and I'm seeing a lot of familiar names from our other sessions. And I am here today just to support Pam and Trent, and also to join as a fan of theirs, and their story is just so worth hearing. So I will turn it back over to them, and I think, is it Trent or on to Trent? So
yeah. Yep.
Yes, it is so good to be back here. It is such an honor to be able to just share this good information with all of you. For those of you who weren't on the last call, my name is Trent Taylor. I am a TBRI practitioner. I also have lived experience, as I was in foster care for 5 years and then adopted at the age of 9 by this amazing woman. And now I have the honor of presenting alongside her and just working to help families and children move from trauma to triumph through our ministry. And it's just such a blessing to see, where my life is now and just be able to help families. So it's a true honor to be here.
So when we thought about what we wanted to do with this time tonight, it was almost overwhelming because there's so much information that we want to share. We also want for you all to have plenty of time to throw some things out and have some discussion. So what we decided to do was kind of give you a few tools for your toolkit. So our goal tonight is we're going to go ahead and flip to the next one. We're going to reinforce one critical concept for you, and then we're going to review 5 important strategies that you've probably already heard a little bit about, but we're going to talk a little bit more and have some discussion around them, and then have lots of time for questions, answers, whatever we want to discuss that would be helpful for you. But just a reminder again that the full TBRI training is a minimum of 6 hours all the way to 20 hours. So we're just giving you little snippets, but we wanted you to have some of the things that we feel are most important and things that you can implement like right now at home. So that's our goal for today. So the biggest overarching theme that we want you to know, and you've probably heard on all of the other sessions, is that every behavior is an unmet need. If we start looking at behaviors and look at them as communication rather than simply defiance, then we start looking at our children very differently. And this is so important for us to do. So everything we're going to be talking about tonight is going to kind of be wrapped around this concept that every behavior is an unmet need. Trent, tell us a little bit how you expressed your emotions and things when you were younger.
Quite simply, the only way I knew how to express my emotions was through my behavior. If I was upset about something, it would come out as a tantrum or, possible disrespect. When in reality, what I was trying to do was communicate that, I was sad or, just like really frustrated about something. And I never was taught the proper words to express what I was feeling. So that's why it always come out as in behavior.
And a lot of the behaviors we see, almost all, are fear-based. So we have to remember that behind these behaviors typically is fear. So our jobs as caregivers is really to become a detective. And I'm going to be honest, it's not an easy job, but it's one that we really, really need to focus on doing, is to become a detective and find out what needs can be met to help our children do the best that they can do. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but just remember that every behavior is an unmet need as we move on. This is the TBRI mantra. And Mindy, I don't know if you shared this with them on the first session because we weren't on there, but this is just a reminder. A lot of our families actually print this out and have it on their refrigerator, but stay calm no matter what. See the need behind the behavior, meet the need, find a way, and don't quit. If not you, then who? So on those days when it gets tough, let's hang this on our refrigerator and take a look. So we're going to go ahead and start with our toolkit, and Trent's going to start us off.
Yes. So the first tool in your toolkit is felt safety. So what is felt safety? Felt safety is a term that has been used when children perceive and their perceptions and they feel unsafe, in their environment. So oftentimes when children have experienced trauma, they learn to fear the adults, they learn to fear the environment. So what is felt safety? It's when a child perceives and feels safe in their environment. It's not just about knowing that they're safe. Because I'll tell you, from my own personal experience, you could have told me that I was safe all day long. But until I believed it, I never truly felt safe.
So it's our job to create felt safety, and that's something that we can do immediately. And felt safety doesn't have to make sense to us. That's what's important to remember. As long as it's a realistic thing that we can do, then we want to do it to make our kids feel safe. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like, and then we'll discuss it.
Exactly. So why is felt safety important, right? So when we have challenging behaviors that are often triggered by a child's deep sense of fear, although a child may be physically safe, the past trauma that they've experienced can be encoded in their brain, and it can easily be reactivated at a moment's notice. From the hunger they've experienced, the abuse they've experienced, or the neglect that has occurred previously, that can trigger intense fear, which in turn leads to out of control behaviors, and caregivers might easily confuse fear-based outbursts with willful disobedience. When fear is in control, when fear kind of takes over our children's brains, our children begin to focus specifically on survival issues, such as safety, hunger, thirst, basically any primitive function that we have as human beings. And for the first several years, I can remember being controlled by fear. I mean, I've said it before, but fear, it really dominated my existence. And because of that, I was always looking at my surroundings, always gauging people's body languages, tone of voice, anything I could do to assess, are the people in my environment safe? And is my environment safe? And so when this happens, when a child feels threatened, his or her primitive brain begins to jump in. And when that happens, the areas of the brain, such as the amygdala, they start to work overtime. And the amygdala is where our emotions and our feelings are all held. And when that starts to work overtime to monitor basic survival needs, the primitive brain is on duty. More advanced areas of the brain, like our prefrontal cortex, which basically helps us with logical reasoning and to be able to think in the big picture, it begins to shut down. Our logic begins to shut down. Our ability to reason begins to shut down. So providing felt safety, it disarms the primitive part of the child's brain. So when a child feels genuinely safe, the primitive brain lets its guard down, and then it's when trust begins to grow. And in addition, the parts of the brain that control higher learning begin to operate again. So again, when a child feels safe and knows they are safe, that's when we get good learning and good behavior. So how do we develop felt safety? And I'll go over this briefly. And as we know, with children in our homes, everything can be individualized, but some basic things that we can do is ask what your child needs to feel safe. It's quite simple. Also, make their day predictable. Have a schedule, write it out, or help let them, work with you as you're making that schedule, so that way they know what to expect and there aren't as many unknowns throughout the day. Give them appropriate choices to share control. A good example of that, and for my situation, was there was a time when my mom would ask me, do you want broccoli for dinner or carrots? Just simple things to allow them to have that sense of control, because they oftentimes never had it. And that helps them make them feel safe as well. Be mindful of your physical proximity, get on their level. So if your child is sitting, sit with them and just be mindful of how close we are, because we don't always know the history that they have. Being mindful of sensory needs is really important, and also honoring their emotions. We want to make our children feel seen and heard, and that's what's going to help us create that sense of felt safety.
So just a couple of examples, and I think we shared these briefly before, but for our boys, they wanted the doors locked all the time, which wasn't logical for us because we live in a very safe area. But for them to feel safe, that's what they needed to do. So we locked doors. It's simple things like that that allow the cortisol levels to come down and the brain functioning to get back where we want it to be. So now we wanted to kind of engage you all with a couple of questions or comments. Does anybody have any of this going on in their home where you're working on felt safety, or any ideas you want to share or questions about this concept? Can we see the?
And I know, I actually put the question in the chat, and Nathan, I don't mean to call you out, but he had a real great thing about what he does to help his child feel safe.
Okay.
I don't know if Nathan's willing to. Oh, is it Nate? I better put on my
Mindy,
glasses.
I can't see the chat, so anything you can do with that, yeah.
So he said, engaging in an activity they enjoy, such as throwing a baseball or coloring. So just simply doing something that they want to do, is helps to bring that. And then Erica put using a low voice tone, non-threatening language, and body language.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, that's good stuff. Absolutely. And again, every child's individualized, so we need to figure out what works for them. And again, if it makes sense to you, that's okay. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. We just need to go for that sense of felt safety. And we're going to try to go real quickly through these things so that we have enough time to hit everything.
All right, so the next tool in our toolbox is the understanding of can't versus won't. So when a child becomes triggered, they enter in what is called a trauma response. That's your fight, flight, and freeze responses. And for the sake of time, we're just going to talk about the freeze response. So when a child is in the freeze response, this may appear as blatant defiance. But it's important to remember that in this situation, the child is simply unable to comply. And I remember a time when I had my own freeze response.
A lot of time.
My brain and my body literally froze in place. So for example, there was a time when I was asked to clean up, whatever I was doing. I think it was playing with my action figures at the time. And my mom was simply like, can you, put it away? And for some reason I got triggered from something in the environment, and it put me into a freeze response. And I wanted to comply. I wanted to do what she was asking me to do, but I simply could not. It was like being frozen in place. And I would think to myself, like, come on, you can do it. We can just, put it away. But it simply was, I could not physically move my body. So bottom line is our response needs to be on.
How do you check if a wild berry? Sorry, guys.
So,
I tried to move fast.
It's okay.
You're good. You're good. So again, bottom line is our response needs to be whatever's going to help the child meet their unmet need. Because again, every behavior is an unmet need. And sometimes, children get triggered and we have no idea why. But we need to address it as if it's a can't, because we don't know whether or not they're able to do what's being asked.
And I'm going to be honest, at the time, I did not know TBRI and I did not know about the brain changes. So I did not even understand the possibility that it could be an inability to comply. So it did look like defiance, absolutely looked like defiance to me. So that's something we just have to be mindful of and change our reframe the way we're looking at behaviors, because very often it's can't. And even if it's a situation where they won't comply, still, what did we say about behavior? It's an unmet need, right? So we still have to approach it in the same way. So we're going to move quick to some discussion. Does anybody have anything they want to share about can't versus won't, or has anybody seen that freeze up and been frustrated by it? Whatever else you want to share about that. We can't see the chat.
Yeah, and I just put in the chat one of my favorite sayings, and I've needed to say it to myself over and over again, is that my child isn't giving me a hard time, they're having a hard time. And that when we
Absolutely.
shift that, when we look at that differently, I think
Mhm.
that really takes it from, like you said, my child won't do what I'm asking them to do, to the fact that they just can't right now.
Mhm.
And then we respond differently to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a big mindset shift when we realize that sometimes our children can't, and that helps to allow us to better understand, why, and realize that it's not personal.
Mhm. Mhm. Any other comments or questions or scenarios related to this concept? Mindy, I can't see the chat. Are we good to move
Yeah,
on or?
I'm just, Erica put in, I think it's easy to call this defiance. We can stop
Mhm.
ourselves and change the lens, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
the only other thing that I would add, when you say that every behavior is an unmet need, again, I think when kids are trying to manipulate and they're trying to, where we think that it is willful, the reality is they are trying to control the situation. That's a need they're trying to get met. And so how can we help them meet that need in a more productive way, I guess, is really the question that we need to get curious about. And I do see,
And that's actually coming down the line here. So
yep,
is there
sorry
another
to get ahead.
question?
And Erica just did put in the chat, just in case other people can't
No,
see the
no,
chat,
you're
just
fine. Yeah.
to feel free to unmute and share your thoughts and ask for feedback on how you could work to change the
Yeah,
lens.
please,
So.
please. That's what we want. Absolutely. We want to help you the best way possible. All right, so we'll move on to tool number 3.
All right, so the third tool in this toolbox is actually quite simple. It's helping meet the physiological needs. And this is part of the empowering principle for TBRI. So we want to make sure that our children are hydrated, that they've had enough to eat recently, and that we're, being able to meet their sensory needs. And also making sure that they have enough sleep. Because we know that when children are dehydrated, have sleep deprivation or low blood sugar, we're not going to get good learning, we're not going to get good behavior. And it becomes, again, that can't. So it's one of those things where you can kind of be a detective and kind of see if your child is starting to slowly shut down. And think to yourself, when's the last time they've had water? When's the last time they have had a healthy snack? And how well did they sleep last night? And on the screen is just a simple picture that parents have actually used in the homes to teach their children, based to help them learn whether or not they're dehydrated or not. So it's something simple you can put, in your bathroom, and you can teach your children, if your urine is below the red line, it's time to get a glass of water. And these little things can honestly help avoid a lot of big behaviors and a lot of future meltdowns and things like that.
And this is the part of TBRI that's kind of a holistic approach where we're looking at all the pieces in the environment. And some of them are so simple, but yet we forget them so easily.
Yeah.
Like when we go work in camp programs, if we have kids melting down, the first thing we do is give a glass of water. And sometimes, honestly, that's enough. Or they're
Absolutely.
overheated, or they need a snack, or they're overstimulated and need some downtime. So just some simple, easy things that you can do in your home right now. Many of you probably are, but sometimes it's easy to forget about these easy things. So we're going to move on to questions or comments relating to that. And, like Erica said, please feel free to unmute and share, and we can talk about it and answer questions or share ideas, whatever you have there. And if there's nothing, we can move on, but I can't see the chat.
There's nothing in the chat right now related to
Okay, that's fine. And that's fine, because this is a pretty straightforward one. Some tricks that we've had a lot of parents share is, let the kids pick out their own water bottle and make it something fun and exciting. There's just lots of ways to make sure that it's happening. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's important. We just don't want to forget that. All
So
right.
Pam, I'll just share really quickly. Maybe this will help people to maybe share and get some feedback. This weekend we had a big event with about 350 people, and young people were there as well. We did have a sensory room for young people to take a breath if they needed that. And early on in the day, I had a young lady go over there, probably about an hour and a half into the event. And I walked over to check on her, and she said, I'm just having a panic attack. I need to breathe. And I said, there's a lot of people in there. And she said, yeah. And I said, are you okay being in here? Is it cooler? Do you need to get some water? She literally, that's all she needed. She needed a second without all those people. She needed to breathe
Yep.
a little bit. She had some water, and she sat in a room with dimmer lights, because we were in a room with a lot of lights. And she sat in a room with dimmer lights. And I saw her probably about an hour after, like I checked on her, then she went to a session, and I saw her in the hall, and I said, are you doing okay? She was laughing, smiling, had a cookie in her hand, and she's like, oh yeah, I just needed a second. So I just share that because sometimes we want them to do a certain thing, and we have in our mind what needs to happen, and we just keep going. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that day that could have just kept going and been like, you don't need the chill space, just go into class, right? You're just trying to not go to the class right now, but that's not what she was trying to do. She just wanted to be regulated before she got back into another space. So I just wanted to share that in case that helps. Again, if you guys want to share and ask questions, please feel free to do so.
And sometimes it really is that simple.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy to think that, but sometimes a glass of water.
Yeah,
And we always want to try these lower level interventions and things before we go escalating anything.
absolutely. Because like
So-
when we're dehydrated or our blood sugar gets low, the
I think,
the lower
Mhm.
part of our brain starts to kind of kick into overdrive, because that's what keeps us going and functioning, and then our higher level of thinking starts to decline. So it's just important to make sure that we stay hydrated and have enough food, and to just being aware, like Erica said, the lights were too much, the people were too much, so she was having a sensory overload, and she just needed a minute for a quiet place to just calm down and to breathe. And that won't always fix things, but it will fix a lot more and help avoid a lot more big behaviors than you might think.
Absolutely.
And something, if I could just kind of piggyback on that, is that not only, I mean, it's pretty amazing with internally what that drink of water does for
Yep.
us. We don't think about that. But the external act of I'm offering you something that you might need right now speaks volume to that child. So just saying, can I, instead of saying you need to stop acting that way, being able to say, can can I get you a glass of water? Let's get a glass of water. Do you need a snack? It's sending such a message to that child's brain that this person wants to meet my need, whether that's the
Absolutely.
need or not, that it's just so powerful. It's very, very
Yeah,
powerful.
absolutely. Being seen, heard, and valued, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So much power in that simple act. Yeah. Anybody have anything else on that? All right, we will move to tool number 4. This one is mindfulness and engagement. So I'm hoping that you all watched the video that was attached to the flyer. But in that, Dr. Cross, who I had the pleasure of training directly under Dr. Cross, but he mentioned that perhaps the most important thing we can do as caregivers is to be aware of what we're bringing to the table. This is often a piece that gets overlooked for many reasons, partially because sometimes we don't want to go there. And I'm not, I did the same thing. Partially is because of the work is hard. And it's easier to just look at what the kids are doing than to focus on what we are bringing to the table. So we know that we're going to parent the way we were parented unless we intentionally change that. So that's something we need to think about. How were we parented? We're going to bring our past experiences into this parenting journey. So it's really important that we look back and see what we're still carrying. It's also very important that we learn our own attachment style. And that's not something that many people are able to do. It's not like you can just, click on a little activity and figure out what your attachment style is, but that's something that we're working on, and that TCU is working on ways to make that happen a little more accessibly. So that's also very important, is how are we interacting with our kids? So we need to be mindful, and this has kind of already come up, but what is our voice quality? For example, my husband was raised in a house where there was just a lot of loud voices, and yelling was just kind of part of what that family did. But now bringing that to parenting with my boys who had been through significant trauma, my husband had to be very mindful of his voice quality, right? Because what was normal for him was very triggering for our boys. So things like that, we have to be mindful of how we're doing it. What's our physical proximity with the kids? Are we close to them? Are we standing over them? Or are we down on their level, making it easier and matching their behavior and making them feel safe? What's our eye contact? What triggers our children? Very important, but also what's important is to know what triggers us. Because guess what? As adults, we also get triggered. And sometimes, very often during meltdowns or behavioral situations, we as parents get triggered and have to figure out why and how to work through that. So this mindfulness piece is so, so, so critical. We have to remember it. And it's really hard, especially when you're caught up in the moment and dealing with behaviors, to stop and think, okay, what am I bringing to this? So one way to do that is a program called Making Sense of Your Worth. This is something that TBRI has partnered with the Halo Project to come up with ways for families, for parents to learn what you're bringing to the table. So this is that piece of that work. I just wanted to put that out there as a resource. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I highly, highly, highly recommend that anyone who is caring for children who have experienced trauma go through this program, because it's going to help you see what you're still bringing to the table, what your attachment style is, and how to change that attachment style if need be. So just keep that as a resource in the back of your mind. If you want more information about that, please reach out. I'm a facilitator in that, or I can send you to another one, but it's a wonderful, wonderful program. So let's talk about some comments or questions here. What do we bring to the table? Is that something that people think about, talk about, or is that something that's difficult to kind of wrap your brain around? Just some thoughts on this. Quiet group.
It's a quiet group. And I
That's
think
okay.
for me, and as I'm probably giving away, I'm big into like sayings, like just kind of mantras that kind of go through your head.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the biggest things for me is that we have to remind ourselves that we parent the way we were parented unless we are intentional about doing something different. And sometimes that's great. I mean, I'm sure there's many of us on this call that had great parents that did great things, and so we want to keep that going. But the fact that we need to be intentional with kids that are in care, because sometimes those parenting strategies that our parents used with us aren't going to work with kids in care. And I always kind of joke to say, even if you're a foster resource parent and you've raised your own kids and they end up being a doctor, lawyer, and astronaut, and they're these wonderful kids, and you are great parents, the reality is we have to be more intentional and individualized to the kids that we're caring for. And so again, I just love that phrase, we parent the way we were parented, unless we're being intentional about it and mindful about it.
And our attachment styles are also very linked to our parents' attachment styles. So that's very important. I wish we had, a significant time to get into that, but it's very important. So that's something we want people to be mindful of and seek more knowledge regarding that if they're interested. Anybody else have anything about what you're bringing to the table? All right.
I think
Okay.
I would just add here that you're not always going to get it right. And there's days you're going to show up as the parent that you maybe don't want to be. And there's times that I'm like, oh, that sounded a lot like my mom. Oh gosh, why would I say that to her? Do you know what I mean? And my child has not experienced trauma, and I still have to go back and be like, I would have done that different. And I think it's okay to go back, and I think it's okay to humble yourself and go to a young person and say, let me rewind that. I feel like I could have done that different, because we're asking them to rewind a lot. We're asking them to redo things a lot. And it's okay to show them that maybe you didn't handle that in the best way. And I think sometimes that makes us feel like maybe we're a weak parent. We're not as strong as we need to be. I actually feel more empowered and more in control whenever I do that. You know what I mean? Whenever I'm able to say, I really messed that up. I think I was trying to communicate A, but it really came off D, like it was real off.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think just showing that piece to your young people is really important.
Erica, there's so much power in that, in what you just said, because research even shows us that there is so much attachment work that's done in that repair. When we go back and say, yeah, I messed up, as a
Yeah,
parent, that's where
absolutely.
some of the best attachment work is done. So yeah, absolutely. When we make a mistake, own it, and yes, you're right, Erica, it makes us feel vulnerable and like we're doing something wrong, but it's actually modeling such incredible skills for our kids. So
Absolutely. And
yeah.
not only that, but it shows your child that they don't have to be perfect,
Mhm.
and that even adults and caregivers, we all make mistakes, but it's how we repair them that's what matters. And, like she said, modeling that is so, so huge. And not only that, but it shows your child that you care enough to go to them and to apologize if you've made a mistake, and it shows them that it's okay to own up to a mistake, that it's not the end of the world, and that, they are still going to be loved. And not only that, but it also teaches them good social skills on how to, apologize. And, and by you saying, I should have done it this way, it's giving them that, that input that they'll maybe think about next time if they're ever in a similar situation, whatever that may be. And also a big thing is just showing yourselves grace. I'm not a parent myself, but as I've gotten more into this work and I've worked with a lot of parents, I see how difficult this can be day in and day out. So I encourage you just to be patient with yourself as you are patient with your child, and to just give yourself grace. We are all human, we all make mistakes, but it's how we repair it that's going to help us determine how we move forward in the relationship.
Absolutely. We all make mistakes. I made so many, so
Mhm.
many.
Yep.
Especially after I learned TBRI, I'm like, wow, I really made some mistakes, but own them, and the repair is powerful. So
Absolutely.
thank you for bringing that up. Anything else related to mindfulness? All right. Our last tool in the toolbox is my favorite. And I think, alluded to some of this previously, but this is my favorite piece of TBRI, honestly. Probably the one that I use the most in interacting with the kids that we work with. So this is one of the correcting principles, and this is one of the levels of response. We don't have time to get into all of them, but TBRI has very specific ways to respond to behaviors at different levels. This one that we're going to talk about, however, will knock out 70 to 80% of the problem behaviors if we can use this consistently and effectively. That statistic is huge. So we need to really try to do this. So playful engagement. So this is when we playfully redirect children without breaking stride. Okay. As caregivers, as parents, I was a teacher prior to becoming a trauma consultant. We want to give a direction and we want compliance, right? That's what we want. Unfortunately, that is not always what we get. So this is a way to reframe things and become playful during the interaction, and that keeps the train moving. That's a Karen Purvis statement. We want to keep moving, right? We don't want to stop and end up going head to head. Trent, what happens when we go head to head?
Well, one, the attachment that you're trying to build is going to become damaged, and it's going to escalate to the point where you might get compliance in that moment, but in terms of future attachment, it doesn't go well for that, and it's going to keep butting heads, and then there's going to be this tension that nobody wants there. But when we engage playfully, when when a child looks at us with a snappy, I'm not going to do that, you're not going to tell me what to do, to be able to look back at them and be like, whoa, you want to try that again with respect? Let's try to figure out how we can do that again, because that way you're not like coming down on them in an authoritarian way and making them feel. And honestly, by having a harsh reaction, you may send them into a trauma response, which then activates that can't versus won't scenario. So we want to make sure that we're mindful of how we're interacting. But again, interacting playfully is going to disarm that fear.
And we're going to give you some examples of that in just a minute. But this will reduce misbehavior while strengthening our caregiver-child relationship. And that is our ultimate goal,
Yes.
right? That's like the perfect scenario. So why is it so important? There's so many things that this helps with, okay? This relieves parent stress and tension in our home. If we can go about our day without having battle after battle after battle, right? Then the whole feel in our home is going to change, right? Our tension's going to decrease. It disarms fear and decreases all those fear-based behaviors we talked about. You cannot play and be fearful at the same time. And we already know from what Trent said about felt safety, that a lot of those behaviors are fear-based, right? So play is critical. It enhances a learning ability. It brings fun and connection simultaneously, builds social skills, facilitates attachment, and positively corrects those undesirable behaviors. So let's talk a little bit about what it looks like. So how can you start doing this? Trent kind of gave an example, even in your tone, right? In your tone of voice. Rather than go pick up your toys, it's time to go. It would be, let's see who can get the toys fastest. Let's see if you can do it by the time I count to 5. Most kids are going to be like, woo, this is fun, and go, right? We just had our support group, what, 2 nights ago?
Yeah.
2 nights ago.
A few nights ago, yeah.
And there was a mom right in this very room who was engaging with her daughter, who was asking her to put up a stuffed panda. And we saw it escalating. It was going up, up, up. It was, I told you to put up the panda. You've got, to the count of 3 to put up the panda. And we could see, okay, when we get to 3, we're gonna have an explosion here. So quickly we modeled for her and said, I bet you can't get the panda in that chair over there by the time we count to 5. Immediate shift in her demeanor, ran with the panda, put it in the chair, laughing. It was that simple. And it really is sometimes that simple. Now, sometimes it's not going to work, I'm going to be honest, but we always want to try. We want to try this first, right? Because we don't want that escalation. So anytime we can turn an activity into a game, and this works, I'm telling you, all the way from little ones to teens. Teens will playfully engage too. It just looks a little different. But again, I bet I can clean up faster than you. Turn it into a game. Use a silly voice when requesting compliance. Because again, the play disarms the fear, right? Which gets all the brain chemistry where we want it to be, and then we can keep on moving. Do a silly dance while cleaning up together. Trent, you want to do a silly dance? No.
There's nothing to clean up right now.
Make transitions fun. Fly like a bird, hop like a bunny, see if you can fly like a bird up the stairs to your bedroom. Anything that's going to take it off of that, need for control and that battle. We don't want to consistently battle because nobody wins in that, right? Tell jokes when doing chores together. Trent's got a whole slew of really bad dad jokes that he could certainly share with you if needed. But there's so many little easy ways to tweak what you're doing to get compliance and continue that connection. Because so often we get so hung up on, we just want compliance. So those are just some ideas there.
And in this way, you are getting that compliance while building that healthy attachment between you and your child. And you avoid big upsets, which is the whole goal. And because we want an environment in our home to be fun and to be playful, not all the constant tension. So by using playful engagement, you can help gain compliance, avoid big behaviors, and develop that bond that we so desperately are trying to create with our kids.
And by using this, you will save yourself as a caregiver so much stress. You just have to try it if you haven't already. So let's talk about this a little bit. Anybody have comments or have tried any of this or have ideas they want to share or questions?
Yeah, I put in the chat too, and no one's responded yet, but I really would love to hear, because this is my favorite part about TBRI as well. But I also want to acknowledge that I think it's can be very hard for some people, especially if you have a child that has big behaviors, and we feel like we need to be constantly, like we have to, like, because we have our guard up, right? We're like living in, and so it can be hard to, because we think, oh, if we let down our guard and we get silly, then we're going to lose control as a parent. But it actually does the opposite. Again, I'm a believer because I've seen it and done it, and Erica just put in the chat, my teens respond well to this, but I also think they also think she's corny, and we end up laughing at each other. And it's okay to be that corny, right? That corny adult. So I am just curious with the group, Is anybody willing to unmute and just kind of share how they've used this or how they've seen it work by any chance? Because I think we could all learn from each other. I'd love to hear what you're doing. Anybody? Is anybody there? Hello? Hello, hello. What about in the chat? Is anybody willing to put anything in the chat? Nathan's probably like, I'm not putting anything in the chat because the last time I did it, they
Get called out.
I got called out. But I see Bridget, you unmuted.
Yeah, I'm willing to
Yay!
share. Sorry, I'm like in the middle of bedtime routine with twin toddlers, so it's a bit much.
Oh, God bless you.
But I do this sometimes at work I work with college students. So this definitely applies more to like older teens and young adults, but using like a personal goal or like a goal of like self-care to offset an academic goal of some kind. So like if a student is having a really hard time committing themselves to getting the study work that they need for a test that's coming up or something like that, like, okay, so if you commit to studying for 2 consecutive hours for this test, or if that's too much, just 1 hour initially, can you reward yourself with like 15 to 20 minutes of self-care time, whether that's like, you know, a part of an episode on Netflix that you're able to turn off, or, you know, like getting your nails done or like something like that, or just listening to like a few tracks that you like to listen to on Spotify, just to kind of give them that like reward mindset. It helps make the academics a little bit more playful when it's really, there's not an easy way to do that outside of like, you know, study games, which we do also use as well. But like, I really see a big difference in them when I ask them to set like a personal goal for themselves. Like, okay, if you say you want to have this test studied for by Wednesday, what personal goal can you set for yourself that's not at all related to like academics or professional, like your job or whatever, that is just for you to take care of yourself that you also want to have done by Wednesday. And we can really see them build up from that. So like if they are only able to commit to like an hour consecutive of study time initially, then maybe by the next week they can build that up to like an hour and a half, so that they're able to focus on more things. So
Good. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. And you know what, Erica, I want to, you put in the chat about being the corny or the cheesy adult. That especially will disarm the teens in 2 seconds. They act like they hate it, but they love it. And especially if you've got, you know, a behavior getting ready to happen, any of that corny stuff will break the walls down pretty quick. So yeah.
And Pam, in the chat, they put about racing to see how fast you could clean or get something done. I love setting a timer and saying, let's go, let's see how how quickly we can get something done. I think that's a really, really great one.
And so simple and so simple.
It is.
It's literally just a saying a sentence, you know. It's so simple, but it is, you have to be intentional, and it doesn't come natural to a lot of people. Like, boy, did my husband have to work at this one. It came natural to me because I was a preschool teacher, but my husband, not so much. So he had to really kind of, you know, fake it till you make it. And really, really, once he saw the effectiveness and how well it worked, he kind of forced himself to learn it. So lots of value. But yes, racing, that one always works. I think we use that one more than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pam, there was one
Good
more in
stuff.
there just about like for younger children, like getting them to go somewhere, like walking like a different animal. You know what I mean? So like they're like, oh, well, you're really doing well being a turtle right now. Could you show me how a cheetah goes there?
There you go.
How the
Yes,
cheetah gets to the
exactly.
shower.
Yes, perfect. I love it. Yes, good stuff. All right. Thank you for sharing those. All right, so a quick review on what you now have for your toolbox. These are 5 easy things that you can do right now. So you can take small steps to create felt safety. Remember that behavior is not defiance. It's that can't versus won't. Meet those physiological needs with snacks, hydration, sensory needs. Assess what you're bringing to the table and start playing. So those are 5 easy things that you can implement, you know, right away. So that's what we kind of wanted to offer you today. And we wanted to leave enough time for discussion about anything that you all are facing that doesn't have to have anything to do with these concepts we talked about or anything we want to talk about TBRI related. So we do have we've got a little under 15 minutes left for that. So you all are a quiet group, but we would love to help answer some of your questions or talk through some of your struggles. So is there anybody that wants to share or ask questions?
While everybody's thinking about their questions, I just want to share my second favorite TBRI tool, which is related to giving choices. I know that if you were on with me before, we talked about it, but it literally changed the trajectory of outcomes in my house. I know that sounds like a big statement, but when we're talking about choices, the real important thing about that for us to understand is that our kids and kids that come from hard places, the kids we care for, and really all kids, quite honestly, because as you get older, you're seeking control and things like that. It is literally, and I think Dr. Cross said at my training, that a child's need for control is like their need to breathe. Like it's like our need to breathe. And so they're constantly looking to have control of a situation. And when you implement simple choices throughout your day, you are able to give them, their brain is getting the message that says you have control right now. And it could be something as simple as, do you want to wear this green shirt to school or do you want to wear the orange shirt to school? And so I think there's so many ways that we can incorporate choices throughout the day with our kids. And as Pam said earlier, it's just changing how we word something. And so I guess I'm kind of saying that as a statement, but also throwing that out to Pam and Trent. Have you used anything specifically with like giving choices, or do you have any examples of how that's worked with you?
We use that constantly.
yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things that was effective with my boys, definitely. And Trent, you might want to speak to that and what that did for you and
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, growing up in foster care, I had zero choices. I didn't get a choice when I was asked to move from one foster home to the next. I wasn't asked whether I wanted to, do basically anything in my life, if school hop, things like that. So when I finally got the chance to have a choice, honestly, I was kind of dumbfounded. I looked at them like, you're asking me?
Yeah, he almost didn't know what to do with it.
Like, I
Yeah,
didn't know what to
yeah.
do with it. But over time, I really started to appreciate it because it made me feel like I was being seen and what I had to say, it mattered. It gave me a voice in a time where I had felt voiceless for most of my life, and giving them that sense of control, because we know kids from hard places, they need to have that sense of control. And so when we can give them that, one, it helps meet that need. And two, it helps avoid big issues, and the parent is still in control because the parent is the one offering the choices, and typically we want to try to limit it to like two options, especially if a child is starting to shut down a little bit. But just being able to have that, yes, being able to give your child a yes is so important. And sometimes your child may look at you and say, I don't like any of those choices. I'm not going to do what you're asking. And then that leads into something called a compromise that we'll probably talk about another time. But, again, choices, it feeds that the sense of control that we crave. And it just lets them know that what they have to say, it matters. And it also teaches them to advocate for themselves and to voice their own needs.
And that your voice is heard.
Exactly.
I think what he said is important though, especially if a child's new in your home, to limit those choices. Because I made the mistake of, for example, let's go to Target and you can choose your cereal. Okay, well, there's 150 cereals to choose from. It was a freeze, it was like, whoa, I cannot do this. So we need to limit it to, okay, here, choose this or this. At first, anyway, right? Because you remember feeling completely overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And then as your child is able to, you
expand
their
it.
choices,
Mhm.
things like that. Now, sometimes, choices may not be appropriate, but whenever we can, we want to try to give them that, because at the end of the day, they're trying to meet some kind of need that they have. And it's our job as caregivers to help them do that, to help teach them how to do that and giving them the words so that way they don't have to use their behavior, which is what we learned to do.
And choices are so easy to incorporate throughout the day if
Yep.
we're intentional about it.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could give them 10 choices by the time they go to school,
Mhm.
it's not hard. So yeah, actually, Mindy, thank you so much for bringing that up. That's,
And it's also a
Yeah.
good way to incorporate playful engagement as well when you're
Mhm.
giving choices. When the child doesn't want to wear a particular shirt, you'd be like, okay, well, do you want to wear, like Minnie said, do you want the green shirt or you want the orange shirt? And just getting them that playful, it kind of
Mhm.
disarm that fear and let them know that what they have to say matters and that you are going to meet their needs and that you're there for them and that you care.
Mhm.
Because sometimes going through foster care, we sometimes feel like some of the adults in our lives don't care what we have to say or what we want in life. So when you give them that, it truly it opens up their minds to a whole new possibility. It helps them feel like they are worthy of having their needs met and worthy of feeling loved.
Yeah, and Erica put in the chat, and I just want to make sure to mention when we're talking about choices, just to kind of stress the fact that when we're giving choices as the parent, we already know we're giving that yes to either one of those choices,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So if we know that it's cold out and we don't want our child wearing the tank top to school, we're not giving that as an option for
Right.
them. We
Absolutely.
Yeah.
already in our mind said we don't care which one they choose, we're going with that option. So I think that's a really great point that we want to make sure we
Mhm.
stress.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, we have under 5 minutes left. Mindy, you have any other good points to share? Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I I guess that just the question that I would raise, and I hopefully the group would want to hear it, because I'm sorry, I feel like I'm dominating the conversation. But what do you think is the biggest thing that changed for you two when you learned about TBRI? And I know that's a big question, but is there something that you like in particular that kind of shifted for you?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, throughout the years. For me, as soon as we had TBRI, the whole mindset of me and my mindset of that there was me against my past and I was on my own. When TBRI came along, the whole mindset shifted for me because my family, they made it blatantly clear that we're in this together. And that was the biggest takeaway for me, was that I wasn't alone anymore. It wasn't my responsibility to carry this burden of overcoming all of this trauma that I'd experienced for most of my life leading up to that point. So the biggest turning point is when I knew that we were in this together. And that is such a key thing when it comes to TBRI, is doing this together, living life together. I think Karen Purvis talks about, how it's a dance and it takes two. It's not your child against their past, it's you and your child against their past. And that sense of togetherness and that team mentality, that was the cornerstone for me.
And for me, I was able to do that and implement that when I gained an understanding of the brain changes and that whole behavior is an unmet need and the can't versus won't. I looked at them differently. I looked at them through a different lens. I started to think, okay, what can I do to come alongside them to help them succeed? As opposed to, before just, you need to just comply. So it was a whole shift in mindset, but as soon as we got it, it was life-changing for our family, and it is for so many others.
Yes, absolutely. And with TBRI, it takes a lot of intentionality
Mhm.
and, stepping outside your comfort zone a little bit. And at the end of the day, we want our children to thrive. We want them to know that they are loved and that they are cherished and that their needs are going to be met every time, the best that we can. Sometimes we may not be able to meet whatever the need is because we may not know what the need is.
Mhm.
But letting them know that we're going to do everything that we can to help best meet that need and let them know that they're safe.
Mhm. And that we're in it with them.
Absolutely.
That's the difference.
Mhm.
There's several times I was down on the floor
Mhm.
crying with Trent.
Mhm.
crying alongside him. And those are the moments that he remembers now. However many years later we are, but
Almost 15,
Yeah.
14, 15 years.
but those are the moments,
Yeah,
right? Some of the
absolutely.
hardest, most difficult moments are the most memorable moments for us in terms of attachment and healing.
Absolutely.
So,
Because,
yeah.
like she said, getting down on the floor and just, sitting with me as I cried. She was the first person to ever do that in my life. And it showed me that she truly cared about me. It's one thing to say that we love, the child in our home. It's one thing to say that we're going to be there for them. But when you put the action behind it, behind the words, when you combine the two, that's where the game starts to change. And that's when the kids will eventually over time see that, okay, you're not just saying this, you actually mean it and you're doing it.
But it does take time, right?
It
We have
does
to
take
prove
time.
it. We have to prove
Absolutely.
it.
It takes time.
Um,
This whole process takes a lot of time. And I'm sure many of you are probably shaking your heads like, yes, it does. And it's not an overnight thing, but it's so worth it.
And it's such an incredible journey. And
Absolutely.
that's why we sit here and do this now, is to give other people hope. Trent's behaviors were incredibly difficult.
They
And
were.
now here we sit and he's teaching you all. So we want to give you all hope with that.
Mhm.
And know that we're here on this journey with you and you're not alone and we see you. We know how hard this is. And we're here. Anybody can reach out anytime if you just want some encouragement or some praise,
Yeah.
because we know and we thank you for stepping up and answering the call. So
And just so everybody knows, I put some links to videos. If you haven't watched the video that is in the registration, go back and click on that. But I did put those links. I also put a link to the TBRI podcast who ours truly, Pam and Trent, were recently on. It's a really great episode. But they're really great things that you can put on after you drop the kids off at school to kind of just it's just really pretty amazing. Oh, look, and you have your resources. I'm sorry.
there's a few more, but those aren't ones that you said. So
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, so that
Perfect
works.
combination.
Yes.
So
Yes. And,
yeah.
and I will say also keep learning.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean,
Yeah.
we as TBRI practitioners, we do this a lot, but there are times when we go back through it and we're like, oh
We're
my
still learning.
goodness, like,
Yeah,
I
we're
can't-
still learning.
That's how she said it. A
Mhm.
parent person would say
Yeah.
something, and it's a process.
Yeah.
Be patient, show yourselves grace, show your children grace, and just know that you are doing everything that you can to make an impact on them. Even when the day seems down and you feel like you're not making a difference, I promise you, you're
You
making
are,
a
yeah.
difference, whether you see it or not. And you never know the difference that you're going to make on that child's life, even if they're with you for just a short season of time.
Mhm.
You never know. You may be one of the few homes in which they truly felt seen, heard, loved. So
And thank you for
yes,
doing that.
thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for stepping up and doing this calling. Thank you
Mhm.
for taking care of kids and for just showing them that you love them and that you're willing to do whatever it takes.
And
to
thank you
let
for
them
letting
know
us
that.
share with you
Yes,
tonight. We
it is.
appreciate the opportunity so much. It's such a blessing. So thank you. I think we are.
All right, guys, we are over our time, but I just wanted to say thank you, Pam and Trent and Mindy, for joining us for our third and final part of our series. I do think this is a well worthwhile training session, and so if you guys, wanted us to do something later in the year, I feel like we could pull that off again. So just reach out, let us know. Just a reminder that the certificates and the recording will be emailed to you from Gail Osborne at Foster Family Alliance. So we thank you guys again so much, and feel free to leave some more comments in chat if you would like to. We'll hang out here for another minute or so. Have a good night, everyone.
And Pam and Trent, are you getting all the comments in the chat? Everybody's saying thank you. It was wonderful.
Oh, okay.
All
Okay.
of that
Yeah. For some
stuff.
reason, yeah, we haven't been able to see the chat, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Thank
appreciate-
you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Fun. Let's see.
You look like you are glowing, Pam.
I know. I'm coming in here.
You're an angel. That's
There we
why.
go. Get close.
All right, guys, I think we just got a bunch of thank yous in there. I don't know if anybody is putting anything on that they need assistance with. So if we could just hang for one more minute just to see if somebody needed assistance. And if you would like me to share that PowerPoint, I can as well. So you just
Sure.
send it to me if you want, if you feel comfortable with sharing it. I'll get that to the
Sure.
group also.
Sure. We are happy to.
Like the awkward silence.
I know.
But Pam and Trent, how cool was that you're on their podcast?
Yeah, that was really fun.
It was, I mean,
Oh.
honestly, we were at a conference in South Carolina last year, and I ended up talking to the regional director for the East Coast, and
Okay.
we talked for a little while. She got our contact information, and then the person in charge of their podcast part, reached out to me at random. I just saw the random email in my inbox, and I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that's a huge honor
That's
to
a big
really
deal.
share,
That's pretty
our
cool.
story in that way. So we were truly blessed and
Yeah.
honored to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. When I saw it pop up I was like, I felt like I knew celebrities. I was so excited. It was good.
All right. So we're going to exit, guys. If you need anything, my email address is, let me just see, did I put it in there? No, I put that in a special message. I'll just put my email address in the chat in case anybody needs anything. Sorry, it's a long one. So if you need something, just email me, but I'm going to let our presenters go so they can enjoy the rest of their night. So thank you guys again. I appreciate you hanging in for the 3-part series.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Okay.
Bye.